Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Jazz Chats with Cool Cats, a virtual conversation concert series featuring esteemed drummer and host, KCH favorite and yours, Pete Siers. This series has been generously funded by seasoned underwriter, Bank of Ann Arbor. This presentation is free, but please consider supporting our world-class artists and our Kerrytown Concert House by making your own gift at kerrytownconcerthouse.com/donate. Enjoy the program.
Hi, everybody. It's Pete Siers here. Jazz Chats with Cool Cats. I have an amazing guest. I am so excited to introduce, and you probably already know her. I hope you do. This is Miss Marion Hayden.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Marion, I'm really grateful that you are able to participate in whatever we can do. This is not what we had planned. I was so excited to play at the house with you. We had Buddy Budson lined up, and everything just unraveled. It is what it is, and we're going to proceed. And that's and I appreciate Abby and Monica for kind of standing up for us to say, let's make this happen. We've got the technology, let's work it. I will say it was anxiety provoking for me because it took me out of my element of how this was developing in this little series. So we're going to roll. And I'm really grateful. We're at Marion's studio. We're in my studio. So you guys get to see all of our dirty laundry. And we're going to have fun. And I am really happy to introduce to the people that are in the know at Kerrytown a little bit about Marion. She has played at the house a fair amount, but she's not visible there a lot, I will say. And I would have to say that unless you're a diehard jazz supporter in the metro area, you probably haven't had a chance to meet Marion. Marion is, she is, as a musician, she will light up the bandstand. Her presence is always felt. It is delightful. It is serious. It is accurate. And it is super creative. And it's joyful to be around. So having said that, I want to let you know that off the bandstand, she is also an amazing educator. She is a Kresge Arts Fellow from 2016, which is a major award in our area and beyond. And she has a really, of all the musicians that have come out of the Detroit school, Marion has, well, it's never been out of its prime, but she came out of this really vital period of Detroit jazz, and she's the torchbearer now. And it is just a delight to have you here on screen. You look great, and I want to talk to you about like what's going on with you. How are you holding up during COVID, etc.?
Well, first of all, Pete, I want to thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this beautiful series, Jazz Chats. It's really great. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for all the lovely things that you said. And I'll just say, as I usually say, it is my honor to be from Detroit and to play this music we call jazz, and to represent it wherever I go. And I always represent the city. I don't care what has happened, what kind of thoughts other folks have about the city. I always say, there's the airplane view, there's the flyover view, there's the I drove through a neighborhood that needed some love view, and then there's the real view. And if you want to know the real view, you got to come and ask somebody, and I'm a good person to ask. I can tell you about that. So I'll just say that, well, my family and I have been well. Everybody is doing pretty well. And, we're not ill, that's for sure, but we are getting pretty tired of it all. We are getting a little weary of being inside. As a musician, I was totally looking forward to us being on the stand together and just getting that. I mean, there's one thing that you get from playing and good, good rehearsing by yourself. Luckily, I do have a young drummer in my purview in my home that I'm raising, so I do get some drum love. I get a chance to get to do that, but I mean, a whole rhythm section and all, it's so hard to come by these days, and I'm so just so glad to be able to when we get to do this again. But we've been kind of, muscling through the whole thing. I did a lot of gardening this year. That was, that was one of my. As a matter of fact, we'll just start now. I'll give you I'll see if I can do a little screen share on some of my gardening pursuits this summer. Not sure if I can. If we can get on my desktop, maybe not. But anyway, I got some really nice gardening. Can anybody see my gardening photos?
Yes, I can.
And for those who are really into some good eating, these are collard greens. My collard greens were outstanding this year.
Yes.
And then my next twist was to make this backyard into a rehearsal studio. So that's how I rehearsed my band.
Nice.
This year. We had a couple of big tents up, and we got out there and just we rehearsed with the zinnias and the green beans and the celotias, and that's how we got things going. So it was a very interesting summer, very interesting summer, and I'm just glad that we're all safe. And it was also an opportunity, I'll say, Pete, and I bet you may feel this way too, to learn some new technological skills. I feel like I'm not too bad at Zoom now. I've got some I've got some Zoom skills.
Oh, look at you.
I'm not sure if it's good for much, but it can. What'd you say?
You putting up those pictures up like bam. That's awesome. I've had I had to pivot my private teaching to FaceTime is working well for me. So Zoom has a bit of a noise gate that can be moved a little bit, but that has really been an issue for me. And you just get into these situations where you got to figure it out, and it's okay, because if we had to put it on the shelf and then get to it when we get to it, that is also problematic. And just like what we're doing right now, we're out flying by the seat of our pants, and if we have pants on, that is, even if you
right, if you're wearing pants. I do agree with you. That is a little tip to those that are listening, is that FaceTime does tend to work better. Unfortunately, for when I teach for these educational institutions, they tend not to want you to use FaceTime. It's a little bit too, intrusive. They want something, that can be recorded and that kind of thing. But I think Zoom, for sure, Zoom hears the bass as background noise, and it does everything it can to suppress the bass. Does it do the same thing for drums?
It can, and it's, like a cymbal especially. And the first couple notes I can get, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see, but I gotta, it's that has been problematic, but you figure it out and you move on. So, as you can see, I got pads, I got whatever it takes. And I'm still trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I'm glad that everybody is well. And, how's your hands, like, with not playing daily pretty much?
I'm going to tell you, that has been when the shutdown first happened, I was way more traumatized than I probably thought I was, and I was not really doing as much practicing as I need to. Because frankly, I didn't really know what to think. And so when things started coming back up, maybe in maybe late June, July, I really had to struggle to get my chops back up to anything. And now I know that, I don't care how traumatized I am. Godzilla can come down the street, but I'm gonna be practicing that bass, because especially these instruments do not forgive you. They are unforgivable if you do not keep those chops up. And so, yeah, now no problem. As a matter of fact, I've had to do quite a few guide tracks. I know some of you musicians will know what I mean by that, where I'm teaching a class, and now the students had to submit recordings for the final concerts, and a lot of times I've had to make guide tracks for them. And and it takes some work to do it. I am glad to have the work. You can work me, and I'll do several takes and just kind of grind it out and really make sure I get it done. And so, yeah, but keeping your chops up is a real it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And still, and I don't know if you agree, people, for me anyway, whatever I do at home is not the same as being on the stand in front of somebody, and the momentum that you get from, having folks, a whole rhythm section, horns, that whole thing. There's a certain other level of drive you get from that.
Right.
And it's missing,
For me, I mean, especially early on, because I had a really great beginning of the year, and then after the complete shutdown, this is like March 12th, I remember it was the last date I played, and I wasn't sure what or how long, we just didn't know, but for some reason I had a great practice regiment, and it was like kind of the only thing that was keeping my mental ability not to get too far in the future, or in it was just like I could somehow stay right in the slot of where I was day to day. And if I could just kind of complete this process, I was having enough momentum that I didn't get wigged out mentally. But then after I did get a chance to play, I noticed like the synapse of like thought ideas just weren't connecting. like, I never had to think about that, but it was like, and I didn't care for that. So, we just kind of stay in the saddle and keep going, and not, you got to keep your wits about you, man, because it's a little scary. And there was so many layers by the end of the summer, so many layers of stuff going on, that there was a lot of anxiety in the air. And so, and music aside, so that was hard. It was hard for everybody.
Yep, I agree and that point that you made about just it's subtle, but it's to me it's the reflexes of performance, and those are the kind of chops that there's the reflexes. You certainly can keep your chops up when you're practicing, but that performance reflex it's a little different. There's a different I'm sure there's something different going on, a different part of the brain that needs to click in, and needs to click in on a regular basis to keep that going. And that was indeed a really challenging thing to keep going. And I totally do understand that, it's very challenging, very challenging.
Well, enough of the present. Let's kind of go back, and I want people to know your history. You grew up in Detroit on the West Side, right? Mm-hmm. And your dad was a pianist?
Yeah, my dad was he was kind of more of an undercover pianist, but he was really a great pianist. And he was a swimmer. He was a swim coach and a diver. And he was one of the few black men who was involved in swimming professionally as a coach. And before he passed, my dad passed quite a long time ago in 1973. But before he passed, he was actually a referee for collegiate swim competitions. So he was really quite a pacemaker in his field, especially as regards African Americans involved in that field. But what my dad was ultimately, as far as being a pianist, is he was also a huge record collector. And so therein was my entree into a great love of jazz. That's just, that steadied me my whole life. He was, as I said in one of my bios, my dad would listen to music all the time. And he had a record player with a little speaker that, back in those, days when I was coming up in the, in the 70s, they didn't have, they just had, he had a speaker with a long cord. So when you wanted to, you couldn't take your speaker outside and Bluetooth it. But he would take his speaker outside with a really long speaker cable and put it outside in the backyard. When he was mowing the lawn, he'd be listening to Miles, right? So that was the level of love that he had for the music. And so there was just a general infusion of jazz in my household all the time from him. And my mom, who was just passed 2 years ago, was a brilliant woman, and she was a science teacher. And so, but she had a love for more of the classics. So from her, I learned just oodles of Gershwin. Just, that was her thing. And so much Gershwin from her that, when I would play jazz standards and they say, hey, do Embraceable You, or, well, that's not Gershwin, but anyway, if, she'd ask me, people would ask me if I knew a standard, and I'd be like, yes, I do know. I just happen to know that one. That happens to be in my psyche, because from way back. And so, so that was where I learned just a lot of music. So one of the things I take from this, I always give to people, is that if you want your children to know music, you must play music for them. As long as you can get into their little heads. Now, of course, when they get to be teenagers, it's a lot harder. But up until the time they're about 10 or 12, you can really have a lot of control over their listening atmosphere, and you can introduce a lot of great music to young people then. And by the time I got to be 12 and I was playing the bass, I was completely bitten by the jazz bug. That was my thing. Of course, I did like the music of my generation. I loved, Motown and all kinds of, funky music and whatnot. But in terms of what I wanted to play on the bass, it was jazz. Yeah, I started playing bass when I was 12. First, I played cello when I was 9. Then I moved to bass at 12.
So let me ask you, what in that early era, was there like a performance that you saw, or was there an event in your life that was just like, oh, that's what I want to do? Did you have that aha moment?
You know what? There were a couple of things. One, I would say, is that I grew up in a little neighborhood called Russell Woods Park in Detroit. It's still there. It's a great West Side neighborhood in the area of Dexter Avenue, Livernois, and Davison. And we have a park in that neighborhood, and we used to have park concerts. And so and this was a park that was easily walking from my house 3 blocks, right? 3 blocks up my street, and you'd be right in a neighborhood park. And that park would feature all kinds of great local musicians playing music. And so that was really inspirational to me. And also, one of the things I always say is that we have to support live music at the level of people's neighborhoods. People should not have to, it's beautiful what Kerrytown does. Somebody should give Kerrytown a grant to do Kerrytown in the neighborhood. Right? You take some of your great artists from this fabulous venue and take them and present a neighborhood as something in a park free that kids can just walk right down and see. Hugely influential. And so I heard concerts like that I really loved. And then I remember my dad took me to Baker's Keyboard Lounge, which is a really great jazz club. It's still working jazz club in Detroit. And I remember my dad took me to hear that I believe at that time could possibly been the Terry Pollard Trio. At the very least, it was Will Austin on bass, who grew to be one of my great bass mentors, and a dear friend of mine. Will just passed this year. And probably Burt Myrick on drums, who I also spent some good time on the stand with. So Will was probably my first bass hero that I actually knew, that I had, direct contact with. And then, from then he took me to hear, Oscar Peterson. I heard Niels Henning Ørsted Patterson. I heard the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Big Band. And it just, so I had some really great opportunities to hear some great music when I was coming up.
Fantastic. So you went to Cass Tech.
Yeah.
And did you have a teacher there? Did you get to play with other musicians, or was it orchestra, or did they have a jazz department, or how did it work?
Well, so that's a really great question. What it was, more of my soapbox is about education, how important it is to bring artists into the school. So when I was about 13, my dad took me, my mom and dad sent me to a summer jazz camp called Metro Arts. And this camp was run by the likes of several fabulous musicians that became lifelong mentors. One of them was the great Wendell Harrison, and the other one was Harold McKinney, and the other one was Marcus Belgrave. And so I started learning jazz when I was about 13 at that camp, 13, maybe 13 going on 14. And then when I went to high school in ninth grade, lo and behold, Marcus Belgrave was a resident artist at Cass Tech. And he was brought in by our music teacher, who was a woman named Marilyn Jones. Marilyn Jones, who was my friend, also a lifelong friend of mine, my music teacher there, Marilyn Jones. Fantastic. And in fact, I've got a little picture of that. Let me see if I can find that.
Oh,
I got an awesome picture that is not of, you can't really see the whole of me, but you can see some part of me on this picture. So let me see if I can find it. If I can find this picture. This is really cute. This is I'm wondering, can you see this picture right here?
yes. Wow.
So
Oh.
that gentleman right there is Marcus Belgrave. That's Marcus at Cass Tech, probably circa 1972, I would say, or 71. That's me on the bass over there. The one over here with the super big afro and the glasses on the side is Kamal Kenyatta. Kamal's my godbrother, and he's been also he's not only my godbrother, but he's been a mentor of mine for years. So that between that summer program and start at Cass Tech, that was really how I started off in jazz, and that was my entree into the great music community in Detroit that has been such a great source of inspiration and learning for me and so many others for many years. These musicians happen to just decide to make Detroit their home, and I think it's really important that some of us stay. Some can move to New York, and that's as it should be if you want to do that. But those that stay will be the ones that help to form the next generations. And so I have to give them the credit, give Marcus and Wendell, people like Ursula Walker, Naima Chamberges, Donald Walden, the great Roy Brooks. I have to give Ken Cox, Charles Bowles. I have to give those musicians credit for being here and being willing to be educators and models for what a life in music can really be. How one operates, what one does, how one earns a living. I learned a lot from those musicians, a lot.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is solid gold. I often think about, of course it's cool to leave if that's what you desire.
Of course.
However, I feel like jazz is a bit of it is folk music. Somehow it's gotten pedestaled to this really gigantic proportion, and I'll say Kerrytown really brings that kind of down. It's a great experience, but you get this so close, and the sound is so pure, and it's almost like a sacred type of sound at Kerrytown. So I will say that concept of jazz as folk music really really moves me. There's a lot of glamour and glitz, but I don't know, man. I like to know that real people are making it, because it becomes more soulful to understand to me. So I completely understand what you're saying. Here's the cool part, that you have had these mentors for so long in your life. A lot of people don't, they get a period of time in their life where they really get a lot of information and guidance, technically, musically, learning how to live as a musician. But you've kind of like, you've stayed in that lane and you really have uplifted the whole scene, Marion. And that is highly commendable.
Well, thank you, Pete. I'll just say that, and it's funny. I've actually been asked that before, in a kind of an odd way, like in such a way that perhaps one would think that if one does not leave, one has not been successful.
Yes.
And my way of thinking about that is, what is your idea of success? As your idea of success mean that you can, like, one has to be willing to judge that for oneself. And my way of thinking is that this area has provided me with a very broad range of experiential experiences. And I mean deep dive experiences, not just like, oh, I played with this one person. I've had a good portion of that, but I've also learned a lot of other things that one has to actually humble yourself enough to be a protege and actually check things out to find out things about how to produce a show, how to run a venue, how to book a band, how to tour a band, all those kinds of things. You have to kind of be someplace to figure those things out. And I got a lot of really important lessons from these individuals. Plus, I would also like to say that my general thought about the music is that, and one of the things that I think is very strong here is that that comes from this area and other areas as well, is this idea that there is a regional sound, that we are really not all seeking to sound like one another. Not that, we certainly will borrow from each other, but there is a certain regional approaches. And if you seek to go someplace, perhaps like New York, and become homogenized, then you will not retain that, right? And to me, the point is not to become homogenous. The point, at least in my personal practice, is to retain those things that are really strong from the region that I learned the music in. What are the strong lessons that come from learning music in Detroit? What are those lessons, and to be able to showcase those things. Not that I don't internalize other things, learn more from other musicians and all, but I just think this idea of being able to be a platform for what you represent, how you were trained, who trained you, part of your legacy. That's a really important thing, and that's one of the things you can really get from being in a place like this. So I'm glad. I feel wonderful about it, and so many great lessons. And I like to pass those on too.
Absolutely. I hear that in your playing. I mean, almost as if we go right back to that Metro Arts program. Like, when just me being mentored by Marcus as well, I know how he teaches and how he wants you to be open and react. And it's going to be a little bit wild and free, but it's also like dialed in. And so I completely understand. And you've got all of that in every time you play. It's really remarkable, and I appreciate that a lot.
Well, thank you, Pete.
So let's keep going down the road a little bit. So after you're in the scene and you're a working musician now, and so how did the beginning of Straight Ahead start to form, and what led you to get to be signed on Atlantic?
I will have to say thank you for asking that. That has been a really inspirational project to me. I just can't tell you. Those women have inspired me in so many different ways. I've learned so many great lessons from being a part of that band. And I'll have to say, initially, we were actually brought together by a fabulous woman from Detroit, vocalist, entrepreneur, producer, arranger named Mickey Braden. Mickey Braden. And I'd like to see if I can do, I have a little screen share I'd like to do of that. I'd like to do right now. Here is, this is probably our early, and one of the real early nice pictures that I have of Straight Ahead with Mickey Braden. So if you can see this, and that's Mickey has a kind of the shiny, she's a tall woman, she has the shiny thing on. That's Galen McKinney next to Mickey. That's me holding the bass. That's Regina Carter next to me, and that's Alina Moore, our pianist there. And so that band actually started in about, I'm going to say maybe 1985 or 6. And we were really fortunate and at that time to have a place to play. Mickey started that band as a slapback, I'll say. She was actually mad. She was actually working with Earl Van Dyke. Some of you may know Earl Van Dyke is one of the leaders of the Funk Brothers from Motown, right? Earl Van Dyke, fabulous pianist and an organ player. And so Earl, she was working with Earl's trio, and I guess they had a gig for a long time, and then all of a sudden the gig had I think the owner did not want to pay for a vocalist. He didn't want to pay for a fourth piece, and Mickey ended up having to be out of the gig. And then she had an "I'll show you" moment and said, "I'll show you, I'll get my own gig, and it's going to be all women." And so she called Alina and Galen and myself, and we got basically a throwaway night, which, if I'm not mistaken, was a Monday night at Burt's on Jefferson when that existed. Some of you all from Detroit will know that Bert Deering, the fabulous jazz entrepreneur, had a place on Jefferson right next to what is the Crown Plaza Hotel, formerly known as the Pontchartrain. And so we had a Monday night, the throwaway night, and just kind of worked that up from there. When Regina Carter came home from Europe, she was in Europe for a few years, and she came back from Germany. She joined the band. And then Mickey ended up leaving and going away, going to New York, and we replaced her with Cynthia Dewberry, who was an Ann Arbor resident at the time. And Cynthia was actually introduced to us by Brian Brooks. Oh. Brian Brooks introduced us to Cynthia Dewberry, our vocalist. And we were sent to Switzerland by the Detroit Montreux Festival when they had an exchange program. Somebody from the Montreux Festival in Switzerland was come to Detroit, and someone from the Detroit Jazz Festival would go to Switzerland. We went to Switzerland. We got a fabulous video from that. And when we came home, that video was presented by a woman named Sylvia Moy. And I'm going to put this in somebody's ear. Sylvia Moy. Sylvia Moy was one of the great writers for Motown, and one of the first women to write in Motown, and one of the first women, probably one of the persons responsible for Stevie Wonder's early career, really getting Stevie Wonder out of the box after he was little Stevie Wonder. And so anyway, we ended up getting a record contract with Atlantic Records, and we did 3 records for Atlantic, and it was just fabulous. And I think it's kind of hard to get those kind of contracts now, but when we got those contracts in the early 90s, they would give you tour support, they would send you places, we got full publicity shots, things like that. As a matter of fact, here's a nice picture from our Atlantic days. This is a magazine shoot that we did that I'll share with you, that I think it's really cute. I like this one. It's a different shot, and let's see if you can see this one. How about that? Can you see that picture?
Nice.
That was the band circa 1992.
Nice.
Yeah, that was I can't remember what magazine that was, but anyway, it was really lovely. So a very lovely photo shoot we did with all of us, and And then what's been really lovely is that the band has really continued now. So here's a little more recent picture of the band, and our recent vocalist is a really great vocalist named Kimberly Wright. Kimberly Wright. And so we've the band has had a chance to do some really great touring, recording. We've opened for some really great folks. We've been to Europe. We were in Australia in 2018. That was really lovely, and it's been a really great opportunity to really learn how to compose and arrange. So I mean, there's just some really practical skills that I've gotten out of that band, as well as a lot of sisterhood. Some really great sisterhood.
Fantastic. I love that. So, okay, so you're writing this out and to no end. I mean, this is continuing on. But I want to say now, so the Kresge Arts Grant. So tell me what happens, because this is kind of like chronologically what's going down with you. You're riding high, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I was really lucky. I think Kresge came has been maybe, how many years they have in now? I'm going to say they must have at least 10 years in now or so, because Marcus was actually an eminent artist. I believe he might have been one of their first eminent artists. He might have been the second or maybe the second or first or second eminent artist from Kresge. And so that is a really important, I feel, legacy that they've started here in Detroit in terms of recognizing artists from visual arts, from writers, and it's certainly musicians and all kinds of performing arts, dancers and the like. And so I actually first received the Kresge Artist Fellowship in 2016, and so it was a really really great affirmation of my work. That's the way I look at it. You have to submit for it. Okay, so they don't just pluck you out of the atmosphere. You actually have to apply for it, and it is competitive. So there are lots of other people who have also applied for it, but you have to submit your best work, talk about yourself, put yourself, contextualize yourself in terms of an artist and what you do. And so I really appreciate Kresge for the opportunity to be able to further explore what I do as an artist, to support myself as an artist. And last year, they actually gave me an additional grant to do a piece that I called Highland Park City of Ogun. And that was a commissioned work it was a response to a prompt that they sent out to artists. The prompt was, how has your community changed? How has change affected your community? And my husband and I'm married. I have, my husband is Imsafel Gardner. He's a wonderful visual artist. And we've raised two really great young men here. My oldest son, Asukili Gardner, actually works for Kresge now. And then my youngest son, Michael Tariq, who you have met, is a wonderful drummer. So we've raised a family in Highland Park, Michigan, which is one of the original auto cities of the world, right? This was the home, Highland Park was the home of both the Ford Motor Company and the Chrysler Pump Company, both started here in Highland Park. And so this piece that I wrote called Highland Park City of Ogun explores how Highland Park has changed over the generations. And I call it City of Ogun because Ogun is the West African Orisha that has dominion over people who work with metal, who make cars, drive cars and trucks, who are blacksmiths. And any of those folks would be under the dominion of Ogun. And so since Highland Park is a city of metal workers and people that work in the factory, I call it Highland Park City of Ogun. And so I composed music, and I also got some really interesting interviews from people that live here and had them talk to me about what their experiences have been over the years living here, the good, bad, and the ugly. And so that was really very exciting. It was a great project to be a part of.
Wow, that's fantastic. Love that story. I was not hip to that. That needs to go on your bio. Love
Yeah.
that. So was any of this music recorded?
I did. I recorded. I did a video from it. We actually did the performance at a smith shop. That's an actual blacksmith shop. So we did the premiere was at a blacksmith shop, and I did a video performance. We videoed the performance, and then of course I was looking at the beginning of the year to get in the studio and record it, but now we'll have to figure out some other way around that. I missed my window. We had a little window in the summer when
Yeah.
things were looking okay, and I could have gotten in there, and then now not quite so good. So anyway, that's next on the project. The next time we get a little opening,
Wow.
next on the agenda.
We'll look forward to that for sure. So after that, and I think this is kind of like when things started to emerge in your educational career. Like you were already teaching at Tri-C College in Cleveland by this time, right?
Yeah. I started teaching at Tri-C, and I think it was maybe 1994, I want to say. That was my first teaching gig. And that was they have a spectacular spectacular college, for especially since this is Tri-C is a community college, but a spectacular jazz education there. It has brought some of the finest trumpet players in particular to the world of jazz. Dominic Farinacci, Curtis Taylor, Sean Jones, all those three musicians all came through the Tri-C program. And so that was my first teaching. And then I've had some really great opportunities to teach along the way. I taught also for I also ran a program for the Virgil Carr Cultural Arts Center. I ran their summer jazz program for about 5 years. And then I've been teaching at University of Michigan for several years now, and it's been a joy. I'm actually a U of M alum, and as a matter of fact, my son Michael Tariq actually is also a graduate from Michigan. So I've been really glad to be involved there, and I teach for a couple of other great programs. I teach for Michigan State University Community Music School, which is a really great evening program for young folks. I teach for Oakland University, and then I also have run a few other, last summer I ran a symposium for young women in jazz here in Detroit. That was really great. And then I also teach for the Jerry Allen Jazz Camp, which is the camp that Jerry Allen started at part of the New Jersey Performing Arts Center in Newark. And Regina Carter is now the artistic director of that. So I teach bass for that camp. And that is a fabulous camp. And it's all girls, which I really enjoy that a lot.
Fantastic. One of my students, she participated in the camp, and
which one was it?
The Jerry Allen camp.
No, I mean, which student can you?
Alex.
Oh, yes.
And she's a Huron High School student and an overachiever. I love her. She loves a challenge. But here's what I want to say about the staff, because this is on the onset of like all your summer plans were all on the board, right? And now nobody can get together, right? And this is all virtual. How are you going to, that's why you got Zoom chops for sure. Because this was a feat of magic. I know that. So I know you all were thrown in the deep end, and it's like, we got to figure this out because it's already happening.
We were told, you were so right, Pete. We ran that whole camp. And that one, and I have to give kudos to Regina Carter and NJ Pack for that, because they took a risk. Everybody else basically just said, we're out of here, time out, we'll see you next year. Sorry, we can't do anything for you, nothing can't. Nope. They persevered, and you know what? Those girls were just completely giddy. They were so happy to see somebody every day, and we figured it out. You just kind of stumble along, and have good intentions and work as hard as you can. And next thing you know, we were like, oh no, the week's over. We're gonna miss you guys.
Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of what's happening with us.
Yes.
And I do believe that at some point we'll be able to get all out there on the bandstand again. But I will say this, that people's perception of music and how they hear it because they haven't heard it live is really different. The couple of little snippets I had during the summertime just playing out in the park down the street from my house, people were mesmerized by live music and they could feel it on a different kind of level. So I'm really optimistic about how things will unfold for us. I mean, we're all paying dues, serious dues, with the financial aspects of like how we work, because there's so many different threads that we have to pull to get to make a living, and it's fascinating, it's interesting, it's it's part of that business is we have to be as creative as we are musically in order to make it all work. So I do think it'll all shake out. And another thing about those students that I see that have not given up or caved to some degree and have kept their wits about them, they are gonna just emerge far from the pack, and that has been really exciting to me. And I try to give them perspective on like how far they have come during COVID, and they don't really have a perspective in their own mind yet, because they just they're in the saddle and they keep chopping, but
Right.
But when it comes time to get back together, they're gonna be like, whoa. So I'm excited for my students. I'm excited for your students, and Marion, I'm kind of winding things up here, but I'm really delighted and grateful that you were able to participate. And to the people that are listening to this, we'll get together at some other point, and we'll play, and we'll get buddy, and we'll have a blast, and we'll talk a little bit more, and it'll be super fun.
Yes.
So thank you so much for opening your life and your heart and your office and all of that to everyone. And I hope people that are listening can kind of just see why Marion is just so delightful, and she lights up the room and every bandstand she's on. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you for being my brother on the bandstand. We've had some great times together. Yes. We truly have, and it's just been been my pleasure to know you and to continue to have your friendships for so many years now.
Yes, thank you. Maybe it would be fitting to close with a video clip, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, you have options here, so.
I have lots. Let me see what might be. You know what? I'm going to close with this nice video clip from Kerrytown Concert House, because Kerrytown has been a part of my life for many great years. As a matter of fact, I premiered one of my first commissions that I got was for a piece called Ocean that I wrote on the life of the poet Phyllis Wheatley, who was an enslaved poet from back in the 18th century. And she was just so fantastic. I was just so drawn to her work. And I premiered that at Kerrytown Concert House. So this is I like to play a little video. This is a video of my stalwart band, Straight Ahead. And this is a piece that I brought to the band that is by the great Pharoah Saunders. So let me see if I can do a screen share here, and we'll listen just a little bit.
All right. So in closing, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll end with this clip. Thank you, Marion. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pete.
joining us for Live at the 415. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to read about upcoming live-streamed concerts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about our newest videos and upcoming live streams. Have a good evening.